Welcome, welcome, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for joining.
Oh,
We will give people a minute to get started. If you are brand new, or if
who's going to
you're,
be first in the chat?
it's always a
Let's
question of who is going to be first in the chat. Introduce yourself. Let us know how. Oh,
Long Beach Indivisible is first.
Long Beach, welcome. Amanda, just by the skin of your teeth, you missed being first, but we'll call you out anyway. Please introduce yourself. Let us know where you're coming from. Leah, who's catching your eye?
Let's see. I see Tucson, Lexington, Kentucky, Indivisible, Oregon.
If you're an indivisible group, a
Washington.
local indivisible group, let us know which one. Let's free
Georgia.
advertising for your group right here. We've got thousands of people on. Let them know where you are.
Worth fighting for, Indivisible in Connecticut.
And I'll just note there
Fort Bend
you will
County.
see no Telecaster or our normal background. We're traveling right now for Indivisibles, so that's why you don't see us in our normal background. We're just in some nondescript hotel room, but we would never miss this, like clockwork. 3 p.m. Eastern time every Thursday.
Great.
We're here. Thank you for joining, and we're at that time where the chat box just goes so fast that
Indeed,
it's
indeed.
hard
We got to
to
keep
capture
up.
everybody.
Let's see. Ted and Nina from Lower Cape, Indivisible, Massachusetts. Linda from Naples, Southwest Florida Indivisible. Welcome, new folks. Welcome.
We're going to give people
Vermont.
maybe 30 more seconds, and then I know there are a lot of questions that are already going to be popping up.
Ooh, Indivisible No Surrender Coalition, Fort Bend County.
Ooh.
Like it. Gets a lot in the name. All right, Northeast Iowa Indivisible, Fort Lauderdale, South Florida Indivisible, East Side Alliance in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, Portland, Snohomish County Indivisible, Washington State.
We've
Let's
got
see.
Missoula, Montana. We've got St. Paul, Minnesota. We've got, is there somebody asked if there's a multi-legged creature on her shoulder? I hope not, but maybe there's something in the background. I don't know.
Is that a globe?
There's a globe in the background. There's something, I don't know. Yeah.
That's
We got in the room about an hour ago, so we haven't done a full sweep. Okay, Leah, I know there are a lot of questions. Should we just get a move
kick
on?
off.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
let's
get a move
go.
on. Thank you all for joining. Look, welcome. As I always say when I kick off these, welcome new people. I keep on expecting the surge of energy to slow down in this movement of ours that we've got going, and yet still repeatedly, there every single day there are new people joining this movement. And so if you're brand new, we want this to be as welcoming a place for you. This is a people-powered movement fighting for our democracy. And so if you're interested in supporting a constitutional republic, you've come to the right place. Because where we start from is this foundational belief that the authoritarians want you to believe that they're all powerful, and then that's a lie. That is just a lie. They are not all powerful. All power in this country derives from the people. Now, the way our republic is structured, normal individual people, we don't have power. Unless you're super rich or super famous, the system is not designed to listen to your voice as an individual. Our unit of activism for that reason is the group. We are group-based organizing. That's what we do. Local indivisible groups that you see introducing themselves, these are started by people just like you. If you're not part of an indivisible group, I guarantee you there's one pretty nearby. And if it's not close enough for you, that's cool. You can start your own. That's how all these indivisible groups have started. Somebody looked around and said, well, nobody's organized in my community. I guess I've got to do it. That's absolutely right. That is how we build power locally. It's how we aggregate power statewide. It's how we apply that aggregated power nationwide to kick somebody like Elon Musk out of the White House and prevent some of the damage that they're doing. That's a little bit of a preview. We'll get that to that in a bit. We are averaging still 6 months plus post-election, somewhere between 5 and 10 new indivisible groups every single day in red states, blue states, purple states, all over the country. And I like to start off these meetings by calling out some of the new indivisible groups that have joined from all over the country. And there have been somewhere around 40 just in the last week since we've last talked, around 40. And I have a very biased, non-exact scientific way of going through where I look through, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting place. Where's that? I want to look them up. Or that's a really fun name. And then I call them out to you because I'm really proud that y'all have decided to organize in this movement. Number one, Kathleen in Indivisible Homer. This is Homer, Alaska. I looked y'all up. 6,000 people on the Kenai Peninsula in South Central Alaska. Can I get some love for Kathleen and the new Indivisibles in Homer, Alaska? This next one, I'm a Texan, so I'm always biased for the Texas groups. But this next one's the name. Sandra registered this name. Those Meddling Kids, Indivisible Waco. So Indivisible Waco, welcome that name. I love it. I love it. Beth in Wichita Falls, Texas. Now I'm naming two in Texas because Up until last week, there were indivisible groups, active local organizing indivisible groups in 427 of 435 congressional districts all over the country. So we had all but, what is that, eight? We are now all but seven. We are up to 428 because Wichita Falls is in the 13th congressional district of Texas. Welcome, Wichita Falls Indivisible. Incredible, incredible. We have been getting a ton of indivisible groups in Montana. I will point this out. And on hands off, there were an unusual number of hands off events in Montana. I'm seeing a lot in for the June 14th day as well. We've got a new indivisible group in Montana, Miles City. Miles City, about 8,000 folks on the east side of the state. Welcome, Miles City Indivisible in Montana. And I don't think I've ever, in any of these calls, Leah, called out a new indivisible group in South Dakota. It's pretty rare that we see new indivisible groups in South Dakota pop up. But Carly, in Aberdeen, with Indivisible Aberdeen, welcome, welcome. We love having you here. Thank you for getting your community together. And now I want to call it a couple of groups that are joining in key Senate races coming up next year. We've got three new groups in the state of North Carolina, the site of one of the most contentious Senate elections in the country. We've got Alicia with Chapel Hill Indivisible. We've got Ann with Indivisible Gaston. And we've got Michelle with Indivisible Monroe, North Carolina. These are normal, everyday people who have decided to organize in North Carolina over the last week. Brand new. Welcome. We need you. We're behind you. Similar vein, we've got two new groups in Maine where Susan Collins is going to try to stick around for another term. We've got Lee with Greater Freeport Indivisible. We've got Kim with Indivisible North Haven. Welcome. We need those main groups active. We need them voting against the bad reconciliation bill. We would like Susan Collins to not have another term. And very excited for this last one. Indivisible Ecuador. We get a smattering of international indivisible groups. I wouldn't say it's the norm. I don't say we're covered everywhere. We tend to be very focused on the U.S. Leah and I, being former congressional staffers, we're very focused on how we influence local members of Congress and the administration. But we are seeing a lot of new indivisible groups internationally pop up. And in Cuenca, Ecuador, which is in the southern part of the state, it's described, I'm going to plagiarize from Wikipedia here, as the Athens of Ecuador, known for its architecture, its cultural diversity, its contributions to Ecuadorian arts, sciences, and literature, and for being the birthplace of many illustrious figures of Ecuadorian society, and now, no doubt, very well known for being the home of Indivisible Ecuador. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, excited to be building this movement all over the world now. With that, Leah, do you want to take us over on some notes about these meetings?
Yes, if you've been here before, you know the drill. This is mostly Q&A, some live, mostly live, some pre-submitted. It's going to be available for everybody afterwards. If you want to watch it multiple times, we will be putting it up on YouTube. If you see links go by in the chat that we're linking to action items, to resources, etc., we're going to send all those out in the email after the call. One new thing, we've gotten some feedback on the questions and making sure that the questions cover a wide range of topics. So we're trying to adapt a little bit. We're going to start working with our organizers to take some questions from group leaders ahead of time. For today, we're going to try something new. If you are from an indivisible group, let us know which one at the start of your question. We'll try to intersperse some of those to make sure we get some diversity of different locations around in there. If you want to support those questions, go ahead and vote to raise them up to the top. We're using the Q&A feature on the toolbar below the Zoom window. So you can ask a question using the Q&A feature. You can also vote for your favorite questions. We're going to try to answer a lot of the most popular ones. We are going to keep doing these as long as people find them useful. We are growing in number every time, so we think people find them useful. There are about 5,000 folks on the call right now. And then one just word on respect and caring for each other. We talk about some really heavy stuff during this call. We try to make this a space where people get empowering answers about what we can do, but we're covering heavy stuff. And that means that, we're doing stuff that's personal for folks. Please do your best to keep the chat box constructive. We are a diverse nationwide movement. We treat each other with respect, especially when we disagree, when we're frustrated, when we're scared. That's foundational to our ability to organize together.
That's right. Just to underline Leah's point on the questions, we're trying to evolve and adapt and make this useful for y'all. So this is experimental, I just say. So if you put in your questions, hey, I'm Indivisible Iowa City or whatever you might be, I'll do my best to filter through it. And we're going to do it in real time. Bear with us. We're trying to just make this as responsive to the movement as we possibly can. And please, if you want to support that, vote for those questions too, because we're going to be looking from the top votes down. Sorry, Leah, go ahead.
That's great. Okay, and we're gonna go straight into a question that we have been thinking a bit, or which is I'm doing the survey question now, right?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
no?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
please. Yep.
Okay, great. So the survey question that we're gonna ask this week is gonna be really getting your ideas on how we promote No Kings, or your information on how you are already promoting No Kings locally. So we've got a little bit more than 2 weeks before No King's Day, June 14th. We want to make this a really big, really impressive show of broad popular opposition. We want to make sure that every local news clip that's showing Donald Trump's military, birthday parade is also showing a big group of people who are standing together in community, joyfully opposing this, corrupt regime. And the way to do that, we got to get the word out. How are we getting the word out? We are going to ask you. We're going to lift up the best ideas that we get. We're going to make sure that we package those and get them back out to folks so that everybody in the movement can benefit from each other's brilliance and creativity. So we're going to want to hear from you about what are the creative ways that you are promoting. And I want to note, this is not just a question for people who are personally organizing a No Kings event. If you are going to a No Kings event,
Yeah.
what are you doing to get other people to come to that event? Okay, because this is not just about the organizers of the event going out and like printing up a zillion flyers and handing them out. It's also about the responsibility that every single one of us has as part of this movement to make it successful. With that, I'm going to throw one idea out there that we are big fans of, and we would encourage you to consider. You may notice if you are following us on Blue Sky that we have added to our handles two little emojis, a little red X emoji and a crown emoji. This is our handy little way of putting No Kings in our Twitter handle.
Yeah.
And it's really cute. It's really fun. I'm seeing a little louder, please. I will speak louder. It's cute. It's fun. It's a way to signal and bring people in. If you want to add to your, X handle, to your Blue Sky handle,
Not X. Get
not
off of X.
get
Get off
off
of
X.
X.
Yeah, okay, fine. But whatever social media platform you're on, copy those two emojis, pop them in your handle, and spread the word. So that's our idea, and now we're looking for yours.
It's a cute little idea. It's not everything, but it's easy and we're trying to build momentum. So all the
Yeah.
creative ways. I'm very curious to see what y'all give us. And to be clear, we're not just asking this. We're going to then take your answers and then give that to the entire movement. So if you doing something, anything interesting that you're doing, anything even basic, like we're putting up flyers at the local community center. Awesome. That works too. Tell us what you've got so then we can then send this on to other folks and we can replicate your good ideas. We want to have everybody doing their part to build these up to be as big as possible.
That's right.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right, over to you.
This is the part where Leah and I have now been trading off who does the overview of what happened last week. Leah did last week, so I'll cover this week, where we cover what news is happening. It's always impossible to cover all the news, and this week will be no different. But there was a big piece of news last night, and I want to take advantage of this moment to talk about something that I feel is really important in this fight against authoritarianism. And it's this, it's celebrating partial victories. And what I would say is, especially among those of us on our side, there is almost, and I feel this too, to be clear, there's almost an instinctual response to partial victories. That's something like, okay, yeah, but we haven't won yet. I get that. I understand. That is true. Celebrating partial victories, though, doesn't make you a sucker. It doesn't. Celebrating is a core part of effective opposition. So if you don't celebrate until we fully defeated these authoritarian wackos, we're not going to be doing any celebrating over the next 3.5 years. If we don't do any celebrating over the next 3.5 years, a lot of us are going to burn out. That's just reality. And if a lot of us burn out, we're not going to build the kind of mass people powered movement we need for democracy to reassert itself. And then we're never going to celebrate. So I say this all as a preface to the news of the week, okay? I'm not asking you to put on rose colored glasses. I'm not asking you to pretend that everything is okay. Instead, I'm asking you to be a hard-headed strategist in this fight for democracy. And as a hard-headed strategist, here's what I'm asking you to do: to listen to me read this headline that came out last night with an open heart and an uncritical mind. Just try to absorb the information. Direct quote of this headline. Here it goes. A disillusioned Musk, distanced from Trump, says he's exiting Washington. The billionaire has made clear he is frustrated with the obstacles he encountered as he tried to upend the federal bureaucracy. Direct headline in the New York Times just last night. Take that in. A frustrated, disillusioned Musk, distance from Trump, is exiting Washington. Musk is out. We're still here. We're organizing. Let me take you back a long, long time ago in a galaxy far away. Specifically, it was February of this year in this country, uh, and we identified Musk, we collectively, Indivisible broadly, we identified Musk as the weak link in the MAGA chain. He was this Bond level villain intent on destroying our government, right? And our goal in February was simple. We were going to either fracture the alliance between Trump and Musk, or we were going to turn Musk into this political liability, this millstone around the neck of Republicans in that coalition. We've done both. We've done both. Indivisible's first major action of this year was hundreds of town halls in February called Musk or Us. It was Musk or Us recess. That's what the toolkit was labeled with. That's what the branding was. That's what we drilled down on throughout that week of action. And then we did it again in March with empty chair town halls. We identified Tesla dealerships as a legitimate target for peaceful protest when an unelected oligarch is trashing our government. And I got to say, bravo to the Tesla takedown protesters who just supercharge that and we're showing up week after week after week. Now, you see this, and I know the instinct is it's hard for me to celebrate sometimes too, because I'm naturally unsatisfied by progress. I want more of it. I don't want partial victories. And the doubts and the well actuallys start creeping in, like, well, actually, we know a lot of damage was done by Musk. And well, actually, we know he lined his pockets quite effectively with government contracts during this process. And well, actually, we know that sure he's left, but he's still got a relationship with the Oval Office. Hell, if you're paying close attention, you see Stephen Miller's wife left with him. So how far away could he really be? But here's what I want, just in this moment right now, try to push those intrusive thoughts away, at least for a little bit. These authoritarians, they want you to believe that resistance is futile. They want that. They want you to believe that they're all powerful. There's nothing you can do. They want to grind you down. But the simple fact of the matter is, in the simplest way I can put it, describing the events that have just transpired, the world's richest man and Donald Trump's largest donor got his ass handed to him in Wisconsin in the Supreme Court race last month. And this month he's leaving Washington with his tail between his legs. I don't know if that's full on surrender or just a strategic retreat, but either way, this is at the very least a modest win for democracy. So I'd encourage you to celebrate this small step in the direction of democracy reasserting itself. The richest man in the world sought to take over our government. He's leaving Washington frustrated with his brand in shambles. That's the facts. That's where we are. The Elon Musk of 2024 was this heroic figure of Silicon Valley. He was leading this wave of tech bros who were coming into right-wing politics to take over the place. The Elon Musk of 2025 is a cautionary tale for would-be oligarchs. Sit with that. Feel good about that. Have a drink in celebration of that. Fight's not over. This isn't a complete win. A lot of damage has been done. A lot needs to be fixed. And yet, we are taking steps in the right direction. That's the news of the week as I see it. Leah, anything else before we go into questions?
That.
Okay. I'm going to repeat Leah's urging to submit questions. If you could also please put in, if you're an Indivisible group looking, I'm gonna try in real time. Leah's gonna answer a lot of the questions. I'll try in real time to identify ones from Indivisible groups. But to start, we will go with Eileen, who has the top question about the big ugly bill. What was our name for it? Bullshit bribes for billionaires. That's what we've been calling it internally. But in any case, the BBB bill. We'll start with Eileen's question, and we'll go through. So that's where we are. Okay, Eileen asks, I read the one big ugly bill contains a way for Trump to take over forever. It contains a sentence buried deep In the budget language, the provision says the courts can't spend any money enforcing any contempt findings against Trump's lackeys, meaning Trump and his people can do whatever they want, whenever they want. They do not have to listen to the Supreme Court, the people, the Congress, anyone. Is this true? Leah, do you want to cover?
I am going to be totally candid that sometimes someone pulls out something that I have not yet heard about, and I don't want to say that it's not a real problem because, these folks are consistently coming up with newer and more creative and more insane ways to be evil than I could imagine on my own time. And also, I don't have the answer for you on that.
So there is, I've seen some reporting on this
Okay,
actually.
perfect,
So
great.
I've seen some reporting, and I've seen it. The frame that I've seen it in is Republicans being confronted that this exists, and them saying, "Well, I didn't know that was in there,"
Okay.
which is normal for a big bill that is pushed through in the middle of the night with no time for anybody to actually evaluate. Here's what I will say about this bill: it was too big for members of Congress, either on the Republican side or the Democratic side, to actually know what's in it yet. Part of the point of slowing down the process is to make sure that we can identify everything that's in there. And one of three things will happen. One, the provision could get stripped out. They could say, oh, we're getting too much pressure. We're going to strip that provision out. Great, victory. Two, we could identify it as ineligible for reconciliation. When it goes to the Senate, in order to go through reconciliation, it has to pass a lot of tests. And regardless of if senators want it or not, if somebody raises the objection, there's no voting on it. It's just stripped out. It just has to be stripped out. It's called the bird bath. It's the bird rule. Now, we can get into the details if people are interested. But that could just, on a technicality, get stripped out. Or three, and this isn't my preferred scenario, but it is possible because it's slowed down and because attention gets focused on that, the Republicans decide to go through with it anyway, but they don't do it secretly. They don't do it secretly. The public watches, and there is a political consequence for them going through with it. So whether it's this provision or provision attacking nonprofits or some of the other, I mean, frankly, just bizarre authoritarian provisions that they're trying to sneak into this, we are not just fighting to kill the bill. We're fighting to slow down the process to allow public scrutiny of an enormous regressive piece of legislation that will upend much of our economy in service of the billionaire class. So, Eileen, your question is a good one. It's not just about that provision, though. It's broadly about how we fight this bill.
I do think it's also worth noting because the next question is also about alarming provisions in the reconciliation bill, and I think a lot of the same points apply here.
Yeah.
What Republicans have done is that they've basically tried to stick a very significant portion of their entire agenda into this bill, right? I think that we are talking about some of the most immediately salient aspects for people. We're talking about the Medicaid cuts and the SNAP cuts and the tax cuts for billionaires. It has a ton of extra stuff that's just about them consolidating power, that's about them pushing forward their agenda. That's stuff that's very, very obviously should not be considered reconcilable under the current rules. There's also a move going on and some ongoing fighting around overturning the parliamentarian. Ezra, do you want to speak about kind of the parliamentarian's role in this and the recommendations there?
Look, the parliamentarian is an unelected bureaucrat who was instrumental, for instance, in stopping some of what the Democrats wanted to get done when they were in the majority. The Republicans at times will just ignore the parliamentarian as they did recently. They're using the power that they've got. And on the one hand, you would say that upends decades or longer of norms. And on the other hand, you look at the Republicans and you say they got power and they're using it to implement their agenda. I think the lesson we actually ought to learn from this, the way that they're legislating, is when Democrats get the majority again, when Democrats have the House, the White House, and the Senate, we should not just say, well, some unelected bureaucrat says that we're not allowed to do that. The Republicans aren't letting that hold them up. They're not. So I don't think we win on process complaints. I don't think we win on that. I think the way that we win against this bill is we point out how egregious and unpopular and damaging it will be to real people. This is why when you see the polling on reconciliation, so much of the negative polling is about this screws over people on Medicaid. This screws over working class people who would otherwise get Pell Grants to go to to institutions of higher learning. I mean, the actual real person impact, I think, is where we should focus most of our attention. When you start talking about, frankly, even filibuster or
Oh,
the
yeah,
parliamentarian or anything else, people's eyes glaze over. They don't care.
that's right.
Okay. Next question.
I think why
Oh, we
we
just kind of
connect.
answered
Yep.
Kim's question.
Mhm.
Okay, going on to Chelsea. I will say I just tried to skim through really fast to see if there are indivisible groups labeled in these questions. I haven't seen them yet, but I will keep an eye out. So if you're coming from an indivisible group, let us know and I'll try to skip down. Chelsea asks, are you too worried that Trump and the right-wing media will spin the story of No King's Day into a story that is supportive of Trump versus against? I'm concerned that a bunch of people coming out waving American flags could be made to look like support instead of protest. You want to go?
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap that together with the next question,
Yeah.
which is Cindy, who is suggesting or asking if there's a risk to anybody who goes to America250.org to register for tickets for the parade with no intention of attending, whether they might be prosecuted. I'm gonna
Oh,
pull those
interesting
things
idea.
together because I think that there's this big question around like how will the other side spin what is happening right now? And I think that, again, they're creative. They're evil and creative. And so I am routinely surprised by some of the things they come up with. But I think one of the things that we just have to be really, really attentive to, and we're working very carefully, and a lot of the guidance from No Kings has gone out in very thoughtful ways about this, but we want to make sure that to the extent that they are claiming that this is actually about the Army's 250th birthday party and not Donald Trump's long documented desire to have a really big, really, military parade for himself. We really want to make sure that our own framing, our own messaging, our clarity is that we are not counter protesting anything related to that. We are opposed to the massive expenditure of funds for the self glorification of Donald Trump via the aesthetics of his own personal military parade. Um, and we want to make sure that we're like avoiding any version of them kind of spinning it as any other sort of part of that story. So we're working with veterans organizations. We're going to make sure that we're really intentionally elevating that they are doing this as they are cutting funds and jobs for veteran services. We have had folks on this call talking about how they are veterans who are having their loans cut,
Yeah.
who are having their services cut, who are having the clinics where they're getting services support cut. This is part of a broader attack on regular people, including veterans, including federal employees who are veterans. The federal workforce is about a third veterans. Um, we are coming out in support of regular people. We are coming out in partnership with folks within the veterans community. That is the story that we want to tell.
I mean, I just don't see patriotism to these wackos.
Right.
Like, I mean, they are not patriotic. They're self-enriching billionaires who want to destroy the
Mhm.
country for their own personal gain. I think we absolutely should embrace the flag. I think we should actually show up for veterans. We should actually show what a pluralistic democracy looks like and what real America is. And I think we can do that. And any journalist who talks to any of these protesters is going to get the message pretty soon that they're not showing up in support of this would-be monarch.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
I found a question from an Invisible leader, which I think is a good part of the reason, let me just say that I want to take questions from Indivisible leaders is y'all are wrestling with the real challenges of organizing on the ground. And sometimes those are just like technical challenges, and we can do better. We can improve our processes. And I want us to learn and grow. And some of that is answering policy questions and kind of abstract questions. But some of that is like, how do we organize on the ground? And are there things we can do better? So, Nina with Indivisible Denver, I saw you submit this question about announcing dates early, national organizing dates early, like No Kings. She says that our city had a bad actor purposely book the Capitol before they could in order to take the venue away from us after hearing the call on Rachel Maddow when we launched the No Kings Day. That is a great flag, Nina. That is actually a really good flag. And I think one way that we can try to get around this too is by having some alert go out, not to the public broadly, but to maybe indivisible group leaders themselves and kind of a close.
And just to be totally upfront about that, we actually did do that in No King's Day. We did send out had a multi-day period in which only indivisibles and people affiliated with
That is right.
the organizations that were partners at that point before it was like broadly announced to the public were able to register events. none of our systems are perfect. We know that you don't read every single email you get from us. Like, I totally, these things, their wires get crossed and something doesn't quite work. We'll continue trying to figure out how do we like make sure we get everybody before we open it up to the general public, but we totally hear the concern.
I think it is a real concern. One note I will say, we have the broad email list and SMS list that is everybody in the movement, and we have a separate group of folks that are just Indivisible group leaders, and we do a monthly call with group leaders that's somewhat similar to this, but much more small scale. If you are an Indivisible group leader or you're a member of an Indivisible group, and you're like, wait, I don't know about that. You're doing those things. That's normal. That happens sometimes. Get in touch with your local organizer. Get in touch with the inbox if you're not in touch with them. Get on that list so you get invited to the group only events, and that way we'll be able to give you a heads up and we'll like invite you to other things like that. Excellent. Okay, I will bounce back to and look for other Indivisible
Okay.
group ones, but let's move on to
Wait,
the
let's
next
do it.
question. We got Cindy.
Okay.
uh,
There's a real pro.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Do you want to read that one?
Arash, I'll read. Next top question is: there's a real possibility that agitators hired or on their own will join our protests on No King's Day or any others. They would then start violent actions against business or other protesters. This eruption of violence could then be used as an excuse to crack down on peaceful protesters and stop our movement in general. Just a note, that is such a typical move from authoritarians. They look for opportunities to crack down on quote unquote violent protests, or they label peaceful protests as violent, or as you were saying, they infiltrate and they instigate. So I think, Arash, what you're naming here is a real concern. This is something we've seen in other countries and in other contexts. Okay, so Arash goes on. So we need a plan. Let's spread the word that as soon as violence begins against property or others, we, the peaceful protesters, immediately stop in mass, sit on the ground, put our signs down, stop the protests. In this way, the agitators stand out while the peaceful protesters are left alone. We have to do this in mass, like a wave in the crowd as soon as the violence erupts. Make sure there are plenty of local media available and others with cell phones can capture this on video so that we'll have evidence of how we're not the agitators. I think you're thinking in really the right direction here because it is so, so important that we maintain the mantle of nonviolent, peaceful opposition. That gives us the moral high ground. That is not just the right thing to do because we shouldn't engage in violence. It's also the strategic thing to do. Leah, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's grounded by what we know from what has worked in the past here in America and
Yeah.
what we know from has worked in the past or has worked around the country or around the world. There are stats that I will forget about how nonviolent social movements are vastly more likely to succeed than movement. And that's just the math. It's also they're also more likely to attract a larger number of people.
That's right.
So very much in the both moral and strategic place to be. Now, in terms of agitators and in terms of kind of risks of counter protests, risk of violence, et cetera, we do have some very intensive de-escalation, safety, security training for hosts of No Kings. We also have, I believe, some training that is open to the broader public as well. We take this very seriously. We want to make sure that over time we're all developing our muscles here around safety, around de-escalation, around identifying that guy in the crowd who seems way, weird and off and like he's trying to start something. We want to make sure that we've all got the skills and the knowledge about how to intervene in situations where we need to keep things calm and we need to keep things peaceful. So we're with you. I'm not going to endorse a specific tactic because I have not yet done the training for myself. And so I don't know whether I am, there's other things that our folks would recommend, but we absolutely agree that we need to be really intentional about how do we set up the circumstances to make sure these are peaceful and nonviolent and really as big and welcoming as possible.
And I will just underline, hands off was exactly that. We had 3.5 million people and 1,300 protests all across the world in every state, in rural areas, suburban areas, urban areas, some with hundreds of thousands of people. And not a single incident of violence that I saw reported anywhere. It was boisterous, it was empowering, it was fun. People brought their dogs and their kids.
Right.
That's what we want.
Yeah,
That's
we're
what we
going for
want.
fun and family-friendly vibe here. We're going for community coming together to reject corruption and authoritarianism and oligarchs. And we are the people who are holding each other up and having fun together.
That's right. I do at an earlier one of these calls, we got a question, we got a comment that said, I went to the de-escalation training and it was frankly, it kind of scared me a little bit because it made it sound like it was going to be much more aggressive or there was a risk of violence. And the one I went to was a lot of fun and people were out there having a good time and there was no conflict at all. So I do think for if that person is in the audience now, no, this is why we're doing it. That is the environment we want. We don't want to scare people off. We don't want people to feel like they're taking on some kind of like big massive risk and they've got to like lead um, a counter movement within these protests. But also, we want to take this threat seriously because that's what authoritarians will try to do. They'll try to delegitimize our peaceful protest. So
Sure.
great question, Arash. We're
That's
definitely
right.
thinking about this. Florence, Mother Jones article on physical threats made against Republicans opposing Trump's position, specifically Senators Joni Ernst and Tom Tillis. Are you considering bringing media attention that Republicans and other opponents need to be physically protected and calling for local law enforcement to investigate and protect them? I don't think the feds will. This was, I think I also saw Lisa Murkowski mention, maybe it wasn't the
Mhm.
Mother Jones article, but she was talking, she was interviewed and asked, why aren't people standing up? And she made some comment that folks are afraid
Yeah.
of physical violence.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a lot of indications at the edges that various Republicans are genuinely afraid for their physical safety or for their family's physical safety. We've also seen stuff like the widespread campaign of pizza orders against judges. I'm not sure if folks have seen this, but pizzas are being delivered to judges who have issued rulings that the MAGA team does not like around the country. That's kind of a classic, like, we know where you live scare tactic. The threat of political violence is really core to how the MAGA movement operates. This is real. And I think that, we will not know the details of some of these folks and what they think they're dealing with. But certainly, when we watch how Republicans are reacting to Donald Trump, you cannot take off the table the fact that he's basically greenlit. Well, he's freed a bunch of people who committed serious and terrible crimes, and he's made clear that he intends to continue pardoning people in the future in a way that functionally allows them to get away with what they want to get away with. And that's just really scary. I am just going to be super candid. It is not clear to me whether there's like a clear differentiation between federal and state and local law enforcement on this right now. I mean, I think that there's, you know, it depends on where you are. It depends on who your state and local law enforcement is. I don't know if you have a comment on the specific idea of asking for local law enforcement to investigate and protect.
Well, I know that there are, for instance, there was a judge where there was an assassination attempt, I believe, in New Jersey a few years ago, and there was a law passed in order to provide greater protection for the judges. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You should not have to deal with regular threats of violence if you are an elected official in public service, whether you're a Republican or an independent or a Democrat, whether you agree with me on the policy issues or not. I mean, that should be baseline. We can't have a democracy if folks can't disagree ideologically. And full stop. It
Yep.
breaks down democracy. Full stop. And also, if you are voting with an authoritarian and
Right.
using it as your excuse for voting as an authoritarian that you are worried he will come after you,
Yep.
you are in the wrong line of work.
That
I'm
is right.
sorry. I'm sorry. Every person on this call who has attended a march, every person who has spoken at a place has been the recipient of threats of some sort. I'm sure you have seen some kind of pushback on what you're doing. You are standing up and demonstrating courage. And if you are a goddamn elected official in this country, if you are a senator or if you are a US representative and you are voting the wrong way and uses your excuse, well, I'm scared of those guys. Let somebody else take up the mantle. Let
That's right.
somebody else fill that role. I do not accept that as an excuse. So I absolutely want you to be safe. I would support legislation. I would support resources to ensure your safety. But don't come to us and say, I voted for this really shitty bill empowering an authoritarian because I was worried for my personal safety. That's bullshit. I'm sorry,
Yep.
that's bullshit.
That's right.
Okay. Scott asks, moving on. I've been emailing and calling my senators in New York, both D's, repeatedly over the past couple months over various issues, ICE, budget, etc., and met with full voicemail boxes and no responses. Not even a canned thank you for reaching out. It feels like I'm just shouting into the void. Does this outreach really matter? Scott, Leah, I just kind of went on a tangent. You could
Yeah.
go.
No. Um, I mean, look, if you're literally not getting through to a human and you have no way to leave a message, then that is an indication that you are in fact not being heard. And it's also an indication that they are not even prioritizing the basics required to hear you, right? Like, I have answered the phones in one of these offices. It's not impossible to clear the voicemail box in the beginning of the morning. It's really not. Get an extra couple of interns. You can do it. Um, I think this is one of a bunch of different indicators of a Democratic Party and Democratic leadership that continues to be unresponsive to a base of people who are looking to them to fight, continues to really just fail to do the things that are necessary to listen to their base. I'm not going to tell you to keep calling if you literally can't get through or find a way to leave your message, but I am going to say that if that's the case, then we have to think about other ways of getting their attention. You have any ideas about that?
Yeah, I will just say, I think that the problem that you're facing right here is that you've got two senators who don't really care what you think. That is looks like we've got somebody at the door. That is the basic problem right now. And the reason why you call your representative or your senator is because you want to let them know what you think and allow them to factor in to their calculation, the decisions that they're going to make. If they've decided to not listen to your private communication, you've got two options. You can give up or you can escalate. That's it. You can give up or you can escalate. So escalation looks like public pressure of some sort. That's what it looks like. All good?
Yes.
Okay, great. It looks like public escalation. So um, Gillibrand, she was the one of the lead sponsors of this crypto bill where she worked. She was one of 16 Democrats in the Senate who worked with Republicans to pass an industry-friendly crypto bill that allows Donald Trump to take more bribes through crypto. I don't think Democrats should do that. I think that's pretty shitty. I think it's bad. I think it damages the Democratic brand. Forget crypto. It just makes everybody think that Democrats are the same as Republicans. They're on the take. They care about industry. They don't care about normal people, and it makes it harder for us to win in tough districts and tough states. I think that's bad, and I think folks who are taking millions and millions of dollars from crypto probably should get pushback, and it should be public. Schumer, we've talked about Schumer a lot in this call. Need I say more? 91% of Indivisible leaders voted a couple months ago for Schumer to step down from leadership. He's got a 17% approval rating. I would like to say that you can push him to take better positions. Schumer's a weather vane, though. That's how he operates. He is Senate Minority Leader. He looks to where his caucus is. He looks to Gillibrand. He looks to Booker. He looks to others, and he says, "Well, where are they? I'm going to be directly in the center. I want half of my caucus on one side and half of my caucus on the other. I want to be directly in the center." So pushing Gillibrand is a good idea. She's not trying to represent the rest of the caucus, and pushing them publicly is a good idea. Writing off beds, showing up in public, getting attention that makes clear not just that you disagree with them, put aside the policy specifically. They are your representatives in Congress. You have a right to have them hear from you. Should be the Republicans who are the ones hiding because they are scared to defend their positions. Democrats should not be hiding. Democrats should be the party of the people, should be open, should be available. Leah worked for a Democrat in a red district in Virginia. That guy showed up every freaking week to Tea Party crowds to try to explain his
He
position.
met with the Tea Party once a month.
I mean,
His term.
that is the model, y'all. Our policies are more popular. We are on the side of the people. You shouldn't be afraid to show up and respond to the people. And if you're doing that, you're a problem for the party, not just for your constituents. You're a problem for the entire party. So, like Leah said, I'm not telling you to keep on calling if they're not listening. I do think it's your responsibility to show up in other ways, though, to make clear to the rest of their constituents that, hey, if they're not going to get in line, we need somebody who does, who actually helps us win, because we can't have a party that is feckless and unresponsive to the people when we're up against authoritarians. I'm sorry, it just will not work. Sherry asks, how do we stand up against and protect ourselves from tech giants? Think Facebook, Google, Instagram, and huge corporations, Amazon, Walmart, Meta, Whole Foods, Target, Washington Post. Trump himself is not the threat. It's the whole administration and these industry giants who are supporting this fascist oligarchy takeover. We boycott Tesla. Why aren't we boycotting these others?
It's a great question. We talk about boycotts a bit on here. And, the first thing I want to say is that there are some really good and important efforts happening on some of these fronts. The Target boycott has been very impactful in cutting into Target's bottom line, getting the attention of the decision makers there. That's a case where Target engaged in kind of, it's not so much that they're like the core pillar of the Trump administration, it's that they're a great example of a company that responded to Trump coming in by immediately cutting any policy that he might find displeasing, took out all their DEI policies, took out all of their equity policies, just immediately kind of went MAGA with Trump. And they have been facing an ongoing consumer boycott led by the National Action Network, led by a whole host of Black religious leaders and Black churches. It's been really cutting into the bottom line, making a good progress. So that's great. We're not shopping at Target, I'll tell you that. There's also like a bunch of groups on that list where I think there's a very good case for some kind of targeted corporate action. And also, one of the things that we know about boycotts that aren't really structured, that aren't thoughtful, that don't have a really intentional plan around how are we stopping, where are we going instead, how are we going to sustain it, what are the demands, what's the theory by which you like get people's attention and make it hurt over a sustained period of time. If you don't have that, then you're actually kind of, and you launch something and it doesn't really work, you're actually kind of teaching the company that the pain that they will experience for doing something crappy is totally handleable and manageable, right? So what we don't want to do is stuff that kind of is like minorly annoying for them, but actually just shows them that they can absorb that like minorly annoying thing and continue to go around being evil. Which I know is disappointing because it's like I want to figure it out. I want to go after all of them all at the same time. We got to have a more structured plan than that. And so we've been hesitant to sign on to things that are sort of like just boycott everything all at once, because we just real humans are humans. And if we tell you to boycott every single streaming service and every single social media platform, that's going to be pretty hard. And it's pretty unlikely that it's going to be a sustainable plan. It's not that we're taking it off the table. It is that in order to do that, we want to have a really clear theory of how it's going to work.
I would like a way to Amazon, I think is just, I would love to figure out a
Yeah, I
way.
mean,
If people have good ideas on this front too, and put it in the chat. If you're part of something that you think has some legs and is taking off and other people could get on board with, we are curious about this. And there's more to come. To be frank, we're trying to get through No King's Day and make this as big and powerful as possible. And I do think there's going to be an opportunity to focus on those, whether it's businesses or law firms or universities or media institutions, those pillars of liberal democracy that should be pushing back against authoritarianism. I think there's going to be an opportunity to push back and focus our power there. So we're interested, and you're going to hear more from us in the future on this. Want to point to an Indivisible group leader who wrote in, Indivisible Roanoke, said, would love more clarity around endorsing candidates, especially those who are somewhat milquetoast like Governor candidate Abigail Spanberger. Just to note how Indivisible works. Indivisible National only endorses candidates when the local Indivisibles both endorse, unify around them, and ask us to come in. We never parachute into a congressional district or a state and say, that's the indivisible candidate. All you indivisibles get behind. It's not how we run things. It's got to be led by the locals for it to have any legitimacy. So, for instance, when Andy Kim jumped in to challenge the corrupt Senator Bob Menendez, indivisible locals got behind him first. Some of the first local groups to get behind the challenge, they rallied behind Andy Kim, a dozen or something like that of the local indivisible groups in New Jersey. They voted to endorse. They then nominated Andy Kim for a national endorsement. We held a briefing and did a Q&A with him, did a vote of indivisible members in New Jersey, and then endorsed him. That process is available for anyone. When it comes to Virginia, I would point out Indivisible Roanoke, Mark Warner, one of the lead sponsors of the crypto bill with Republicans, is up for re-election this year. I'm not going to go into Virginia and primary Mark Warner. It's not my job. I don't live in
and you don't
Virginia.
live in Virginia.
I don't live in Virginia.
You would not be a great
I would be a
candidate, just to be
terrible
honest with
candidate
you.
to primary Mark Warner. But more importantly, I'm not going to parachute in and say you've got to. Maybe you've got a good relationship with Mark Warner, in which case more power to work with him. You can work the inside track. But if you want to go, and whether it's Warner or Abigail Spanberger or in some other race, it's up to you. It is an organizing challenge for Roanoke Indivisible and the other indivisibles in Virginia, work with Jake, your regional organizer for Virginia. Talk with him about the process. He can help out. And if we're relevant nationally, pull us in. But we might not be relevant nationally. We're here to help, but we're not here to drive it. That's up to you. Okay, bouncing back up. So we're getting some indivisible group questions. We're experimenting with this. I didn't want to skip Audrey. Okay, Audrey asks, I'm very concerned with the DHS request of deploying National Guard on American soil, apparently for immigration control. But we all know that is to have the military in place for a coup. I'm calling Governor Whitmer every day to ask her to say publicly, Michigan won't send troops, but I'm very concerned that there isn't more attention on this in the media within Indivisible. Same goes for the EO of April 28th that prepares for martial law. There has been talk
This
about
is
National
talking about the
Guard.
Insurrection Act specifically.
Well, it's both
Martial Act, yeah.
that, well, Insurrection Act and also Trump nationalizing National Guard in states.
Yeah. Yeah. So the short answer is we have talked about it quite a bit in some of our communications, in our emails. I think, Ezra, you did a kind of like how to think about the Insurrection Act threat before it happened, or before the April 20th deadline for the report on whether or not to invoke, which came back with a recommendation not to invoke it at this time. The short answer is we remain quite concerned about the potential for domestic deployment of National Guard or military. We think it is, I would gently correct the framing of it's a preparation for a coup. I think a coup would suggest that Donald Trump is not already the commander in chief of the military in this country. The question is using the military in ways that increasingly blur the lines between domestic law enforcement and military control within internally. But nonetheless, it's incredibly concerning. There is absolutely, we continue to hear whispers and rumors of various versions of this happening relatively soon. I think the answer that we have to have is if and when that is escalating, we simply have to raise the alarm. This is one of many places where there's not, I wish there was a lever that we could pull that we are not pulling. And the answer is simply that we have to talk to people about how incredibly dangerous and threatening it is to be deploying the military for immigration control, to be deploying the military in ways that are obviously intended to quash peaceful dissent. Ezra, you look like you have an additional.
Well, there are ideas that around Insurrection Act. I think that's exactly right. Around nationalizing the Guard, especially in blue states. So, for instance, he says, California, I'm nationalizing your Guard in order to be part of my deportation force or come after protesters or whatever. Once he nationalizes the Guard, to Leah's point, he's the commander in chief. Once he chooses to do that, he's nationalized the Guard. There have been ideas kicked around, and no governor has moved on this yet, to activate their Guard before he can nationalize it, if it gets up to that point. So one thing that we are encouraging people to do in blue states, especially in Hawaii, in California, in Illinois, in Washington, New Mexico, et cetera, in places where you have a Democratic governor and a Democratic state legislature, you should be actively exploring the options to protect your own state from federal encroachment. Maybe that is dealing with your National Guard in your state. There are other actions you can take as well, but I would not count on Congress coming to the rescue in that scenario. The folks who are going to be on the forefront of protecting you and your fellow community members in your state are probably going to be your state legislatures, your state attorney general, your state governor. We have been going to indivisible statewide convenings in blue states for the last few months, and they're in Massachusetts. There's one coming up in Illinois. I know there's one in Washington. There's one in Hawaii. People are putting these together. I think that's smart. You should be gathering together, not just to ask, how can I push my federal elected officials, but how can I use my Democratic trifecta proactively, entrepreneurially, to start pushing back against federal overreach?
Right. That's right.
Deborah.
The only other thing I would add there is, I don't think it's a secret at this point. There's a pretty big spectrum of where Democratic governors are on compliance to challenging Donald Trump. And I would put that spectrum as kind of like Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer over here to like JB Pritzker over here. And there's some
on the JB Pritzker on the good side.
Pritzker, yeah, and in the good place. JB Pritzker, Janet Mills of Maine in the good place, right?
Yeah.
And people are deciding where they want to go on that spectrum every day. And so I think it's definitely the case you should be asking and advocating on this, but every other choice that they make, right, about whether they are complying or whether they are pushing back on the incredibly insane and awful things that are getting pushed at states, those are also opportunities to try to like strengthen those muscles, to strengthen the pushback of your elected officials. So, just to give an example, Gavin Newsom this week immediately announced that they were going to be changing their policies on trans kids in sports.
Yep.
Shortly after Donald Trump issued a declaration that he'd pull funds from California state government in the event that they if they didn't change their policies. This is a great example of a situation where the answer should be screw you. If you want to be in charge of California policy, then you go get elected in California. I'm the governor of California. These are our policies. You will not make us change them by threatening our money, which you cannot do. We will see you in court. That is what we need to see from Democratic governors. That's what we saw from Janet Mills,
We'll see
right?
you in court.
We'll see you in court.
And she won.
And they won. Yeah.
And then they backed down. And then the administration backed down.
And the same thing happened. I mean, you know what? Kathy Hochul is not somebody that I expected to be celebrating on these calls, but Donald Trump tried the same thing with congestion pricing in New York. Kathy Hochul was like, no, you can't do that. Like, I'm not even, her record on congestion pricing, not great, but she held her ground and congestion pricing remains in place. He is not magic. He is not all powerful. He is trying to do a bunch of stuff that's wildly illegal. Tell him to
fuck off.
I was going to say that, but then I was like, do I curse on these? I don't know anymore. So,
Taco. Trump always chickens out.
exactly.
So, but in order to chicken out, there needs to be pushback. Deborah asks, when are they bringing Abrego Garcia home from El Salvador? That is blatant disregard for the court. It is, Deborah. It is blatant disregard. And this is one of the things, when you talk to some parts of the Democratic coalition, what you hear from them is something to the effect of, when Trump blatantly disregards a court order, that's when we've really got to show up. There's going to be some binary event. There's going to be a before time and an after time where clearly he has done an illegal and unconstitutional thing, and that's when we've really got to mobilize. And my answer to them is, what the hell are you talking about? He is blatantly violating the law now. He's engaging in unconstitutional behavior now. He is ignoring court orders now. Abrego Garcia is an excellent example and not the only one. And so this is why we are trying to build a unified opposition in a time that we believe is a constitutional crisis. We've got an authoritarian takeover. And if you have a Democrat who is your elected official who is saying at some point in the future we will be there, I'm sorry, they just don't get it. They are not on the same page. When are they bringing Abrego Garcia home from El Salvador? Maybe never. Maybe never, unless there is pressure, unless that is overwhelming, unless people actually fight for it. We need more Chris Van Hollens out there who are willing to fight this fight, who are willing to take the fight to the administration, and not shy away from it because, immigration is a bad issue for Democrats traditionally, and therefore we shouldn't talk about it. I wish we had a better answer for you, but the real answer is Trump doesn't want to bring him home, and they're doing everything they can to not back down right now.
Yeah. And, I think we got to continue to lift up the people who are fighting, right? So I see in the chat references to Glenn Ivey from Maryland. Glenn Ivey went, he's the member of Congress who represents Abrego Garcia. He went this weekend to El Salvador to try to get more information about what is happening. He was not able to see Abrego Garcia. We got to continue to have the backs of the people who are pushing on this, because we do know that there are people within the Democratic caucus who do not think this is a good place to be putting their energy.
Steven Sachs asked about, are we missing opportunity to have a big presence in DC on June 14th? And let me say, Steven, we are not exiting the district entirely. What we are trying to do is intentionally not counter protest the military parade. We don't want to give any opportunity for Trump to say, we're going to crack down on these peaceful counter protesters, but we are partnering with Free DC in DC. They're going to be doing an event elsewhere in the district. So if you look on the map, you'll find where you can join it. What we just want to avoid is counter protests literally downtown where Trump is rolling through with the tanks and everything else that's going to go through the streets.
And I will note, if you're in the area, one, there's multiple protests that are taking place in outer suburbs of DC. So you will be able to drive to something, but also consider coming to the flagship protest in Philadelphia. We're going to have an incredible crowd. We're going to have an incredible lineup. It's going to be historic. You're all invited, if you would normally go to DC, to make a day out of it or make a weekend out of it and come to Philadelphia.
Yep. And on that note, Judy, just skipping down to an indivisible group named Democracy 12, is marching from Philly to DC from June 16th to June 28th. So after the event, and looking to have people from all over the country participate. If you're interested, check it out at democracy12.com. Thank you, Judy, for coming over and advertising that. We've also seen other interesting tactics in the Chicago area. Indivisible groups did hands across Chicago and had people, it was six or so indivisible groups from all over the area joined hands together in a single indivisible line, you might say, to show public solidarity against the Trump administration and got a lot of good press for it. So I appreciate people trying to think up good tactical innovations to get attention, to get the focus on Trump's overreach. I think that's great. We've got Jasmine is next up. Jasmine asks, I'm worried about the compliance of police and military with this administration's illegal actions. I'm sure most of them are quote unquote just following orders. Are there any laws that explicitly state that following an illegal order is still an illegal action and that our protectors have a duty to follow the Constitution and refuse to comply? Can we make flyers stating these laws and distribute them at police stations, military bases, ICE agencies, etc.?
Great question. So generally speaking, and to the best of my knowledge, it is in fact illegal to do illegal things just because someone has told you to do something illegal. And also what I would say, and like what we think about when we're thinking about, drawing on nonviolent social movements, what we think about when we're thinking about drawing on the history of successful nonviolent resistance around the world and here in the US is you have to think about it in terms of not just like do people know that something is illegal or wrong, but are you creating the conditions in which they're actually worried about accountability, right? So one of the things that we've really been focused on over the last several months, and that I think people within this movement have done in a very powerful way and helped to buck up the rest of society, is pushing back on the idea that Donald Trump is inevitable, is permanent, is the new normal, right? Because there's the question of like, as any individual law enforcement officer, as any individual business member, as anybody who runs a media operation, as they're making decisions, there's the question of like what they personally prefer. And then there's also the question of like who they think is going to win in the end, right? And what we know from the studies, from the research, et cetera, is that people make their decisions more based on who they think is going to win than on their personal preferences in the long term, right? And so if they think that Donald Trump is permanent, then the question of accountability is not relevant to them, right? If they think that this is just how things are going to be, he's going to stay, he's going to run for another term, or JD Vance is going to take it away after that. That's one world. And they're not going to be super concerned about any future version, about whether it's legal, illegal, et cetera, et cetera. If they think that actually what's more likely to happen is that Donald Trump is going to be historically unpopular, he's going to be checked by broad popular opposition, ranging from people organizing in every community to the resurgence of some of these folks who we've seen pull themselves off the sidelines over the last couple months, that he is going to be out of office in disgrace sooner or later, and that this entire period is going to be remembered as this embarrassing moment when a lot of people went perilously close to complying to fascism and then pulled back. If they think that that's the world that they might be in the future, they are going to be worried about that. They are going to try to live as if they need to live in that world. They're trying to make their decisions as if they need to live in that world too. And that is what we do when we are doing mass protests. That is what we do when we are organizing other people. That's what we do when we drive down Donald Trump's favorable ratings. That's what we do when we build up our coalition.
And so No King's Day is not, yes, it's on his birthday. It's not just about ruining Donald Trump's birthday.
It's not about ruining
It's
Donald
not.
Trump's
No, he is a baby. He's throwing a fit. He's going to have his little military parade that's pathetic. What we're doing on No King's Day is sending a signal to the rest of society, as Leah is saying, that democracy is going to reassert itself. So you law firm, you airplane pilot, you military enforcement institution, you private company, you whatever institution that is thinking about going along with Trump or pushing back against it, what you see is masses of people all over the country who are saying this is temporary. The world we're in now He's a lame duck, unpopular president. His time is nearly up. It's nearly up. And sure, he can throw his fits, he can make his threats now. It is short term. Democrats are going to be in control of the House of Representatives in about 18 months, the way things are going. This era is ending, and an era of accountability is coming.
Yep.
And so you've got to decide, which side do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the other end of a congressional investigation and subpoena that is coming for you for disobeying the law and violating the Constitution? Hey, your choice. You can make that choice, but that's the future you're setting yourself up for if you side with these authoritarians, which is why not only is it important for us to show up and demonstrate that the public is reasserting itself, it's important for Democratic electeds, and I've seen folks like Jamie Raskin and others do this, to start talking about that era of accountability that is inevitably coming. That's not just about it being the right thing to say now and the right thing to do in 2027. It's about sending the message right now to people who are trying to make the decision of what to do in this moment.
That was inspiring. And I'm sorry to say something that's less inspiring to
Uh-oh.
close it out, but I do think it's important, just as we talk about and as we level set about how we got here, that accountability for elites in particular is not something that we are good at in American society, right? I think if you ask me, like, what would have been the best protection against the law breaking of Donald Trump's first term, my answer is prosecuting some people for Guantanamo and for the massive civil liberties violations under the Bush administration. What would have been the best protection against Donald Trump coming into office these days, and this reign of terror that he is currently moving?
Merrick Garland doing his damn
Merrick
job.
doing his damn job, right? Actual accountability and a political coalition that prioritizes it. And so this is something that we actually do have to get. This, if we talk about what Democrats are not comfortable with right now, talking to them about what is the accountability plan, right? How do people who have done unbelievably evil things under this administration, who have ripped families apart, who have imprisoned innocent men in torture gulags abroad, who have stolen unfathomable gobs of money for themselves, how do we ensure that these people actually do face accountability, right? That's got to be part of the conversation with our Democratic electeds, because that is not where they're going to start from.
And impeachment, obviously, is part of this. It's not enough. It's not impeachment of just one man. It is an entire collection of sycophants and donors and assisters in the authoritarian takeover that need oversight and need accountability. I want an entire agenda. I want this to be the priority when the new Democratic Speaker of the House is sworn in on January 3rd, 2027. What is the Oversight Committee doing the next day? When are the subpoenas flying? When are the investigations going? When are the hearings starting? We need to know that not in 2027. I want to hear that now, right now. It needs to be inevitable. It needs to be in everybody's mind that that's what's happening. Leah, I thought yours was quite inspiring too.
Sideways kind of inspiring, but okay. I'll take it.
Okay, we've already gone over.
Yeah.
Thanks for people for bearing with us. Thank you for joining. I think we got through some good group leader questions. Like I said, we're trying to improve. We're trying to make this more practical and useful. I know it's not perfect, far from perfect, but we really appreciate y'all being here every week. We will continue to be here to try to answer questions and build together. Please, please, please look out for the survey that's coming to your inbox. This isn't just some random survey where we're trying to get your question. We will take it. We will read what you tell us about how you're promoting your event. We will send it out to thousands and thousands of other people who are trying to figure out how to promote events. We will build this to be the biggest, most boisterous, peaceful, empowering protest in favor of democracy that we've seen so far this year, and there will probably be more. So thank you for being here. We'll see you again in about a week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, yeah.
Bye.